Well, hey everyone, it's Simeon here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for joining me. We're still here at the UFO MegaCon in Laughlin, Nevada. And we are really lucky to have with us none other than Kevin Day.
Glad to be here. I'm a real live guy, finally on video.
He's really here. You've all heard him on radio, on different radio interviews.
Different radio.
We've been fascinated by your story for months now, and I'm sure everyone here is really excited to be able to see you
Hello,
live.
everyone.
The person behind the voice.
Yep.
We heard a great presentation from you guys last night.
Thank you.
The Nimitz 2004 panel.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought for the YouTube listeners, you could just kind of just really briefly summarize your experience.
You bet. The Nimitz strike group in 2004, the war was still going on overseas, and we had received orders to deploy early. So we were trying to get a lot of training done real quick. So we went out to off the coast of San Diego. We're about 100 miles out or so, southwest of San Diego. At the Nimitz strike group, the Princeton was out there. CAG 11, which is all the Super Hornet squadrons and the helicopters and everyone, the commander for that.
It's called CAG 11, got it?
Yeah. And we were getting ready to do an ADEX, an air defense exercise, which is really high fidelity type training where you're trying to defend a strike group against incoming aircraft or incoming missiles, and
it's an exercise, a combat exercise.
It's all done safely. There's no weapons, and it's all simulated, but it's very high fidelity training and really good training. We call it an ADEX. Mm-hmm. That was scheduled for the 14th of November, but the problem was about around on the 10th of November, I started to observe these anomalous air contacts coming off the coast. They came in my radar envelope right around Catalina Island, which was to the north of us about 100 miles or 150 miles or so. And the weird thing about them, they were appearing in groups of between 5 and 10 in formation, and they were 28,000 feet going 100 knots, which was really strange. And so
really slow speed for that altitude, right? Nothing else goes that slow up there.
It's going to fall out of the sky because you need, the higher in altitude that you go, the more speed you need in order to create lift on the airfoil. If you're air's thin up there, right? So, excuse me.
That's about 120 miles an hour and converted into, just for people who are not familiar with.
Yeah, real slow for
an airplane.
Something that high, right?
Air's kind of thin up there too, so you need a little more speed.
Yeah, and no one on the cruise was concerned this was any type of threat, because you got to remember, off the coast of California, you got all kinds of air traffic. And, so there's a bunch of air traffic over there, but they look weird. There's something really odd about these things. So I'm continuing to monitor them. And my problem with them, though, on the 14th, we were getting ready to launch a bunch of aircraft off the Nimitz to conduct our air defense exercise. And these objects would have been in the same piece of sky in our playground. Right. So I was concerned about safety of flight, safe air-to-air navigation. I didn't want some bad thing to happen, run into these things. So Captain Smith comes down to combat. I said, "Sir, we've been tracking these things. We're reporting them for several days now. And by the way, up to this point, there was about 80 of these things total.
Total of 80. Yes,
and not all at once.
Not all at once. So
five or 10. Sometimes I'd come out, there would be 5. The next day would be 10. And so if you added them all up, it was about, right around that number or so.
If they were all separate objects.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. And I convinced him that, we probably should go look at one. So he told me to take one of the flights had already launched, the Fast Eagle flight, Commander Fravor's flight. Yeah. So I took control from the E-2 Hawkeye, because they didn't have a real good radar lock on them, and I just vectored them towards the closest one.
Oh, so Fravor happened to be the closest one at the time?
He was the first guy to launch. He was in Event 1 off the carrier.
Got it.
Waiting for all his.
You're waiting for the other guys to kind of join up.
Yeah, they're all out. They want to make sure their aircraft's functioning properly and the crew's set.
That's why he's at the cap point early, because he's waiting for the other guys to assemble. I got it. And women pilots too.
You bet.
Right.
So anyway, we vectored the air crew over. Pretty standard intercept until he comes to the merge plot position, which is basically you got 2 objects in the sky in the same vertical piece of sky. And so on my radar scope, it looks like one object now, and I call it a merge plot.
Merge plot.
Well, as soon as that happens, all of a sudden, over the overhead speaker, I had the control comms in the speaker. He's like, oh my God, I'm engaged.
David,
And on radar, and him visually, this object dropped from 28,000 feet down to 50 feet. I found out the next day in 0.78 seconds, less than a second.
Now, how many miles? I was trying to figure out, Kevin, how many miles per hour are we talking about there?
It's huge. I don't want to put out any bogus.
It's really fast.
Yeah, it's very, very fast.
Thousands and thousands of miles an hour.
And the G-forces are enormous.
Just like that.
Yeah. I think a normal aircraft can survive maybe 13, 14 Earth gravities, G-forces.
13 or 14.
This thing was a magnitude beyond that. I mean, it was huge G-forces and no sonic booms.
So normally an object going that fast would leave a sonic boom. What would it sound like?
It would be multiple something. It would boom, 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 like that.
That's what you would have heard if it was a normal object.
It was non-Newtonian. It had to have been
non-Newtonian.
Yeah. So.
Jeez.
So anyway, he's now very curious. So of course he leaves his wingman up at 24,000 feet. He wants to go down and chase it down, right?
Yeah.
So he does. He goes down and chases down the surface of the water. And as soon as he gets down there, this object pops back off the surface of the water, back up to 28,000 feet.
It had gone below the water, we know now, right? We're told.
At the time, I didn't know that. It wasn't my situational awareness.
It wasn't your situation in your station.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he follows it down, and this object comes back off the ocean, back up to 28,000 feet, and continues going south at 100 knots, as if nothing interesting at all had happened.
After the engagement.
Yeah.
Just kept going.
And meanwhile, I got a bunch of other aircraft punching off the deck of the Nimitz.
Yeah,
because
right.
everyone's launching to get ready for the ADEX. And now everybody's got these objects on their data links, because we're sharing our radar on the data links, and they're listening to the control comms. So now, next thing I know, I've got all these interceptors doing their own intercepts all by themselves.
Oh,
and
wow.
At one point, Simeon, it was raining UFOs out of the sky. They're all going They're all going from 28,000 feet down to the surface to avoid the interceptors. As soon as the interceptors left the scene of action, all the objects went back up to 28,000 feet and continue south at 100 knots.
So Kevin, we haven't really heard this part of the story before, because you're launching all these other F-18 Hornets.
Right, getting ready to do an exercise.
As they're launching, they're doing their own intercepts on the other tic-tacs that are up there, not just the one that we've seen in the anime.
In fact, the famous Flare 1 video, Commander Fravor, that he didn't actually take that, because
that was the subsequent flight.
That was the subsequent flight.
Because they're launching off the deck.
Right.
Got it.
It was a subsequent flight. And next thing we know, it's raining UFOs. And
they're all, so as these F-18 pilots are attempting to intercept on their own?
On their own.
They drop down to sea level.
Right. Yep. And then
in different spots where the underwater seamount was, or different places.
Whatever that anomalous thing was down there in the ocean there. It was all in that same geographic area on the ocean.
Same in the geographic area.
the same basic position in the ocean.
Kevin, what was your? I did a little update last night about this, and you corrected me this morning. I think I referred to you as a senior.
No, I wasn't an officer. I was a senior chief, which is enlisted, senior chief operations specialist.
Operations specialist,
which is the best rate in the whole Navy, by the way.
That is.
Put in a plug for that.
Senior enlisted operations specialist.
Senior chief.
Senior chief. And your job is to...
Air defense.
Air defense.
And my main job is to identify anything that flies in the sky. And then
air defense.
And then
identify.
And then make decisions whether I'm going to intercept it or not. Or
you're the guy that makes the decisions whether to...
I recommend the decision to the captain and the tactical action officer.
To do intercepts based on what you're seeing on your radar scope?
They rely on me to
They rely on you
to make the right recommendation.
You were telling me,
and they can always tell me no. I mean,
they can tell you. You write these recommendations. I get it. You make the recommendations for the intercept, and you had 18 years. Am I correct?
I had 18 years sea time on Spy 1 ships at that point. I had more sea time on Spy 1 ships than anyone else in the strike group at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was highly trained and highly experienced. I'm a Top Gun graduate myself.
I got that right. Like you're a graduate of Top Gun.
Yeah, the Top Gun school, not only the pilots go, but the air controllers go with
Fallon, Nevada?
In Fallon, Nevada. Yeah, I spent the summer of '98 there. I was class 0598.
Yeah, so you also, Kevin, you also visually saw one of these tic-tacs with your eyes through binoculars.
Yeah,
how did that happen?
Once this event was over, now in my mind I'm convinced, okay, we just intercepted a UFO. And oh, by the way, this was my very last underway in the Navy because I was getting ready to retire.
Yeah.
And it was my very last intercept in the Navy.
It was your last intercept. Well, it was a good one, right? For your last.
Yeah, and I'd always wanted to intercept the UFO if I ever had a chance.
It was your secret wish, and
yeah, it was my secret wish.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, it was my secret wish.
So you knew where they were, and so you could go up on deck and look through. What did you call them? The large.
Yeah, and you know, at this point, I'm convinced that okay, I want to go up and take a look at these things. I hadn't done that yet, so I went up to combat. I was off watch. And you know, even when I was off watch, I was in combat a lot anyway. So I went back at the console and I picked the closest one because I was going to look at it, and I got the relative bearing from the ship. I ran up to the bridge and I got on this big binoculars called big eye binoculars.
That's what you guys
eye
referred to.
magnification.
Yes,
the lookouts and stuff use right on the ship. So I pointed in that piece of sky, and it was after sundown, kind of twilight, but the sun was below the horizon, and I saw what I have to describe as just a boring white light in the sky.
It were pretty boring.
Yeah, it was nothing special.
That was your tic-tac, though,
but
right?
I did confirm that it was the same object. I correlated
one of the objects.
One of them, yeah. There was other ones out there.
At 28,000 feet?
It was at 28,000 feet, going real slow.
Really slow.
So yeah, I did see it, and other people on the ship saw it in the daytime on binoculars too. And I've heard recently that they observed these things actually making some maneuvers. I didn't see that when I saw it. It was just a boring white light in the sky. And I said, oh, okay, that's boring. And I went back down to combat.
Doesn't look like anything special when you see it through the binoculars.
Anyway, the next morning comes around, and these objects are still out there. So I was like, okay, I better, because I was one of the main message writers on the ship. Any ship that went out operationally, I probably drafted it and routed it and had the captain sign it and left the ship. So I started doing, I was going to go up to combat. I reviewed the radar data, and that's how I know it was 0.78 seconds. We played back the radar data. And I went over to where we record the comms, external communications.
Yeah,
we have a machine that records all of our external comms on an optical disc on redundant tracks. So in case something happens, we can play it back and figure out what went wrong.
Kind of like an 8-track with separate tracks, but just for redundancy.
Kind of like that, and it's on optical disc, so it can't be erased or screwed with in any way.
Right.
Well, lo and behold, all the comms are gone.
It's all gone. The markers are there when you would be speaking.
Every time you key the mark, it leaves a stamp.
Yeah.
And the comms follow.
Yeah.
All the stamps are there, but the comms are gone.
How's that possible? Someone had to physically erase it, or what?
They would have to physically replace it.
Replace it?
Yeah.
All the tracks are gone.
They probably just
swapped the discs.
I'm speculating here because I don't really know what happened.
But the discs were swapped.
They took the actual disc and put the fake disc back on there. Would be my guess. It's just my guess, so I don't.
They would have to have put back the comm marks too.
Don't know how they did it.
Yeah.
Don't know how they did it.
But the data was gone.
All the voice
conversation between you and Fravor and so forth?
Yeah, between us and the aircraft.
You're communicating to each pilot?
Yes.
It's you. And it's all gone?
It's all gone. It's all gone, yeah.
Did that ever happen before?
Not to me.
Not to you.
And I've heard just recently that the same thing happened with the radar data. Somebody apparently, and again, I didn't have this situational awareness at the time. I'm just now learning this kind of myself, but apparently there's other witnesses coming forward saying, yeah, 2 guys from the Air Force came on board the ships, and
we're told that
our commanding officers made us turn over the radar data.
PJ told us that last night.
Yeah, PJ and Gary Voorhees.
And Gary Voorhees seconded it. Same thing.
Well, the same thing happened on the Nimitz and the Princeton, apparently.
Same thing happened.
Apparently, yes.
So they had guys dressed in Air Force uniforms.
They were in Air Force uniforms.
Ask for their so-called data bricks.
Yeah, they wanted their computer.
The radar data.
Basically a hard drive.
The hard drive.
Yeah, the hard drives that come off the system.
And had that ever happened before?
Not to me.
Not to you?
Not to my knowledge.
Really incredible.
That's the encounter. And I have to tell you, it really happened. It really did happen, and those objects were real. In fact, when it was going on, we completely took down the radar. We ran diagnostics on our whole system.
You thought it might be a glitch.
Just to make sure these things were real.
Yeah.
And the whole time I had the highest, there's track qualities on the spy radar, and I had the highest track quality possible on the system the entire time.
Oh, it gives you a rating of track quality.
Yeah, it gives you a rating. You know, it starts high, and then if it gets low, it starts blinking, and it drops out of the system.
Got it. The computer is looking at the quality, and it takes out the low quality signals just in case it's radar reflection clouds.
Or the contact goes past your radar coverage.
Got it.
Falls out of the system, that type of stuff.
So these were class 1 contacts.
Yeah, and I don't want to say much more about that because some of it's classified.
It's classified. I would get it.
What I just said, you can find it on Wikipedia. It's publicly available.
Yeah, we don't want to give anything away we shouldn't here.
No,
but you're telling us a lot.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, I got to ask you one more thing about the encounter. I guess 2 more things.
Okay.
The question came up, obviously, last night. Is this super advanced black budget tech we're looking at, or off-world, something we don't understand? What's your gut feeling about it?
Our small group of guys that are more and more volunteers are coming out, and to a man so far, none of the ladies have come out forward yet.
Yeah.
But to a man, we've all agreed that we're not going to speculate on that.
We're not going to speculate.
It's not our job.
It's not your job. Yeah.
Yeah, because if Kevin Day comes out and says, I think there are aliens, or I think it was a secret government program, then I got to defend that. Now I own that.
Yeah.
That's not.
Okay.
That's not my role. My role is just to let people know that this encounter really did happen, and these objects were really real, and it's some kind of technology that I didn't know existed because it was non-Newtonian. These things were they were aware of us, they reacted to us, and they seem to be prescient too, because we have positions in the sky around the strike group called combat air patrol stations. Mm-hmm. They're just arbitrary points that we pick, and we socialize it via message traffic so everyone knows where these points are. Yeah. And we use these as it's kind of like a hangout spot for the air crews until they get a vector to do something. It's where they hang out.
Yeah, I get it. Kind of spaces in the sky.
At least one of these objects, or may have been more than one that did this, somehow went to that cat point in the sky all by itself.
Seemed to know where it was.
Seemed to know where it was.
It's an exact point.
Right on the exact point. In fact, the air controller, I was the air control supervisor, and I was sitting in the console next to him. He gets on the radio. His call sign was Charlie. And he says, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but the bogey is back at your cap station."
Yeah.
Stunned silence on the radio. No idea how.
Classified information.
The object was prescient somehow. It knew where that cap point was.
The cap point is not public knowledge.
Not unless it reads our message traffic.
And your message traffic is secure? Encrypted?
Yeah, it's secret message traffic.
Encrypted.
Yeah. Well, not encrypted. It's just classified.
It's classified and secure.
Secret.
Yeah. Secure.
Yeah. So
you felt that they were.
I felt they. At no point did I ever think they were hostile.
They never were hostile. That's an important point to clarify.
Yeah.
They never were hostile.
No point did I ever feel threatened. Did I ever feel it? As a matter of fact, my impression was that they just wanted to be left alone.
And they're doing their thing, whatever they're doing up there.
Whatever they were doing, they just wanted to be left alone and leave us alone. We're going south off Mexico, and
really slowly, but we're going there.
Yeah, leave us alone.
Such a mystery.
And so we did.
You did. You canceled the exercise.
We ended up canceling the ADEX. Yeah.
You canceled ADEX
because these intercepts encroached into the time block we had set aside for it. We had a lot of other training to accomplish, so the ADEX, we ran out of time essentially for the ADEX, and so we didn't get to do the ADEX that day.
ADEX. Now, Kevin, one more question.
You bet.
Did you have any lasting psychic effects from this encounter that you think is traceable to this event?
Yeah.
You mentioned the valet Davis model.
The last 14 years for me have been quite an epic journey, actually. And bear in mind, when my personality changes started to happen, I didn't relate it back to this UFO thing.
Right.
I thought I was just having trouble personally, perhaps even going crazy, maybe just having trouble transitioning back to civilian life. I had no idea. But all my friends and family noticed it. I noticed it. And Jacques Vallée and Eric Days, they're doctors. They came out with a paper, and you can Google it. It's called the incommensurability of high strangeness.
Right.
Basically, what that document is pretty short read. It's basically a blueprint for conducting UFO, UAP field research.
Yeah.
And there's different categories, or they call them levels, different levels of criteria that you can. It helps you. It helps you do a scientific approach to the sightings. Well, level five is post-human effects. The effects close encounters have on humans.
Yeah.
And level 6 happens to be societal effects. Well, some of the human effects are physiological and psychological. Some people get sick, and some people have amazing psychological changes. You become more empathic. You don't care about money as much.
Right.
You become more prescient.
Yeah, right. Right.
And all of a sudden you can play sports you never used to be able to play.
Yeah.
You can do
abilities.
art.
Yes,
Your mental abilities increase. But I tell you, the journey of getting there is tough, because if you don't know that's happening to you, and all of a sudden it starts to happen to you, it's traumatizing. It's a traumatizing thing.
Yeah.
And it damn near killed me. I have to tell you, I went through some real tough times.
Dealing just with the mental adjustment.
I was on the road to retire in Hawaii in a beach house.
Yeah.
I ended up quitting my defense contractor job, moved to Sacramento, went to school, ended up separating from my wife, and graduated from school luckily. And during that time, I became obsessed with a family gold mine back up in Southern Oregon. I was convinced I could find the mother lode.
Oh, because you now had these psychic powers to feel empathic and
I wasn't there with this yet. Remember,
you wanted to be alone for a while.
No, it was a gradual process, but I became obsessed with this idea I could find the mother lode.
I get it.
And I'm not a geologist,
right.
but so I ended up in the wilderness in the summer of 2014. Close to 5 months out there. I was broke and disillusioned, but obsessed with finding this mother lode.
Yeah.
And you know what I did?
You did?
Yeah.
You found it?
I found the source of the gold, yeah. But, and what it is, just real briefly, back in the 1930s, my family was staying back there, and they were mining placer gold.
Yeah.
They could never find the source. Well, what the source turns out to be is ancient sea bottom. Yeah. It's called an ophiolite. Now, normally, sea bottom is real heavy. It's basalt. And oftentimes, the continental plates are granite. So the heavy stuff sinks below the granite, and the granite kind of floats on top.
Sure.
Well, in this case, part of the sea bottom got stuck on dry land. And what that is, it's called an ophiolite. And what our mine site is an extinct hydrothermal camp of extinct black smokers.
Yeah.
And it laid down a huge mineral deposit, and it's now on dry land. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know what the case is, my family never wants to mine it, because it's in the wilderness, and in order to mine it, we'd have to destroy the wilderness, and no one in my family is going to do that.
Good for them. Good for them. But you located it with your newfound.
That's my gold. For me, the gold is a story.
That's a great story, Kevin.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. So one more thing that came up last night was going to Congress, getting congressional hearings about this.
That's the goal now.
That's what the goal is.
We're trying to get our grassroots effort going. It's well underway now. We're trying to pull in more witnesses. I've got things working behind the scenes to get Congress interest back in this.
To find out what happened in this event.
Yeah.
What do we know about it?
A group of us want to go to Congress. We want a subpoena, because that radar data is somewhere.
The radar data.
We want Congress to subpoena the radar data. We want Congress to subpoena the voice comms. And we want to tell our story to Congress. Yeah. We want to make them understand, hey, we got something real in our skies, and we don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And if these things wanted to be hostile, San Diego would have been a smoking hole in the ground, because there was nothing our strike could have done about it.
Yeah, right. Right, so we didn't have any evidence they're hostile, but we just don't know who they are.
I don't believe they were.
But we just don't know who they are and what the intentions are.
If there is a threat, it's in the form of the Valley Davis effects.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's going to happen when disclosure happens or confirmation happens, and all of a sudden the whole planet is coming into contact with these things in close encounters, and all of a sudden everyone's starting to change?
Yeah.
And they don't know why? Is that going to be safe?
The entire population of the planet at once, what you went through.
What I went through. And that's also part of the message. I think it's important that we tell the world, yes, these things are out there, and when you contact one, you start to change. Don't be too concerned about it, because there's a reason why you're starting to change, and don't be afraid of it, because it's going to make you better in the end.
Yeah.
You get traumatized at first because you don't know what's happening. You don't necessarily relate it to what happened.
Yeah.
And that at the end, you end up being a better person.
And you find your own gold. Kevin, thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Okay.